Good evening, everyone. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law of New Jersey, notice of this December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Bridgewater Raritan Regional Board of Education was posted electronically on the district website and provided on December 11th, 2020 by sending a 48-hour written notice to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Bridgewater Township Clerk, Raritan Borough Clerk, and by posting on the bulletin board in the Harmon V. Wade Administration Building. As this is a virtual meeting, those unable to access the meeting via the internet are able to listen in by dialing into the conference line 712-432-6514 and conference pin 555548. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Malik. Here. Mr. Joshi.
Here.
Ms. Mead.
Here.
Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Singer.
Here.
Mrs. Hurley.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Mrs. Gladstone. And Mrs. Barlow.
Here. We're now up to item 5 with closed session. Whereas discussion by the board is required on matters that are exceptions to the requirement that a public body hold its meeting in public, and whereas the topics for discussion are personnel BREA grievance, personnel sidebar agreement with the BREA, personnel disciplinary action. Whereas it is expected that the details of the discussion may be made public as soon as the issues may be acted upon publicly. Be it resolved that the board enter into closed session at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we are now in closed session. Good evening, everyone. We are now back from our closed session and we're up to item 6 on the agenda, the student representatives report, and I'll let them take it away.
Hi. So I'm going to start with academics. So BRHS is offering senior students the opportunity to be awarded with the Seal of Biliteracy once again this year. And on December 5th, BRHS held their most recent SAT on school grounds. There was also an ACT held on December 12th. And these are important steps forward for students applying to colleges, as this was the last opportunity for them to take standardized testing in time to meet the early January deadlines.
So this is the art section. Fine arts students have been coming to the high school to collect supplies in order to continue creating high quality pieces of work from home. The BRHS marching band season began again on Friday, November 13th, and the show for this year is called Unstoppable. It performed at the home game against North Hunterdon on Thursday, November 19th. Finally, the Theater Arts Department, headed by directors Mr. and Mrs. Gunning, have planned for the release of the film performance of Shakespeare Unmasked during the second marking period, which will be a collage of both contemporary and traditional acts being influenced by the works of Shakespeare. The film will be opened to the district for a limited time through a YouTube link, and the directors plan to work with the high school's BRTV channel to stream the performance as well. Mr. and Mrs. Gunning are making sure to adhere to all school and state protocols throughout the process, with virtual rehearsals, safety precautions, and acts filmed either indoors or outdoors by the actors themselves or by their families to minimize contact.
And this is the student life section. So we're really proud of our students and their extracurricular activities, which there are plenty of. So the Giving Tree program has been implemented by the BRHS library, and it's a donation system in which students can donate unwrapped gifts for the upcoming holiday season and donate them to children in need. The donations are being cut off on December 17th and is completely COVID safe, and curbside pickup is a method being used. There's a club called Bring Change to Mind, which has been brought to BRHS by Sam Fromberg and Mr. Barbagallo, which focuses on mental health. The club members are highlighting different aspects of mental wellness that may and do affect students of all kinds at BR. The Calligraphy for a Cause club is a club that focuses on the creation of art as well as giving back to the community. It's meant to be a safe, relaxing experience for students in which they can receive volunteer hours and create beautiful memories and works of art, which is currently being held online for club members' safeties. Seniors Annika Kathuria and Ashma Taneja from BRHS's forensics team placed second in the parliamentary debate category at the Phillipsburg Fall Invitational Tournament. Junior Akil Arulasaru placed fifth in the varsity original oratory category, and freshman Iris Pan placed sixth in the varsity extemporaneous speaking category. The Spanish Honor Society was still able to hold a virtual induction ceremony where they accepted 40 students into their club. And the Spanish Honor Society is run by co-presidents Evan Gladstone and Elder Valiz, who say that their club gives a deeper insight into the Spanish culture and understanding of the Spanish language. Student assistance counselors who focus on students' social and emotional needs are meeting with students for 30-minute sessions on stress reduction. They're able to attend meetings through Google Classroom on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1:15 to 1:45 with Miss Zilberman and Miss Amiziel. The Green Infra Club, made up of students Sujay, Pravar, Amog, Anish, and Rithika, received the Presidential Environmental Youth Award from the Environmental Protection Agency. They were one of 10 groups nationwide to be chosen as winners, and the students discovered a stormwater runoff problem on school grounds and created a rain garden with the help of the community. The club and their faculty advisors, Ms. DeMayer and Ms. Blank, met virtually with Dr. Azell and the EPA on Thursday, November 12th, where they were congratulated and able to discuss environmental policies and careers. Suhas Julapali completed an Eagle Scout project to improve the accessibility and usability of the special ed garden beside the 800 building. In order to do this, Suhas rebuilt and reinstalled the gates to the garden. And in addition, Suhas installed a rabbit-proof mesh underneath the current garden fencing. Finally, he and his team replaced the pathway material in the garden with stabilized stone dust. Members of BR Model UN recently participated in India's first international conference, CYIMUN, on November 7th and November 8th. Alexa George, the co-president of the club, served as the chief advisor, and various other members are a part of the secretariat team. Attendees had the opportunity to work with delegates from countries all around the world, such as India, England, and Mexico. The Math Honor Society is offering virtual tutoring to students of all math levels, and the National Honor Society has begun to offer virtual tutoring in all subjects to students.
So for the athletics part, I would also like to say that we are all very proud of our athletic students at BR for representing our school in a very vigilant way. So the BRHS cheer team has revealed that they feel the athletics department, especially their own coaches, have been incredibly flexible with their schedules and have made many students feel comfortable in the fact that they enforce the wearing of masks during practices. Junior Marco Langdon and senior Devin Ciarlante were the first boys team selected for the cross-country All-Skyline Conference, the Delaware division. Junior Vishnu Chenapragada was selected for the second team, and senior Harini Senthil Kumar was selected for the first girls team. The first team selected for field hockey at the Skyline Conference consisted of Rehana Ahmed, Aaron Collins, Tori Bartolotto, and Tori Bujanisi. The second team consisted of Kylie Diesio, Brianna Van Patten, Sophie Marino, and Colleen Kelly. An honorable mention was given to Leah Shokan. Bryce Myers, Ryan McKinney, Miftar Hassanj, Ryan Lewis, Jared Carabinos, Brady Credilla, and Dylan Corsi were selected as the first team in all divisions at the All Big Central Conference. The first team selected for boys soccer at the All Skyline Conference consisted of Brad Floystrop and Jake Perry. The second team consisted of Jack Schlau and Luke Laughlin, and an honorable mention was given to Rahul Iyer. The first team selected for girls soccer at the All Skyline Conference consisted of Alexa DeBarros, Lauren Sullivan, and Maggie Osojoglu, and the second team selected consisted of Riley Santangelo and Sarah Walker, with an honorable mention given to Kaylin Corbett.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for our student reps? Okay. And thank you very much for filling us in on what's going on at the high school. And next we have the superintendent.
I do, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think everyone was informed about the petition for midterms, and we received the email from Dr. Azell. Can you guys kind of fill us in a little more on that, please?
Yeah, of course. So as we all know, there was a petition started by 2 students at BRHS that brought light to the feelings of many students on the topic of midterms. So Dr. Azell organized a meeting between himself and a select group of students and teachers, which was made up of the full student council, the student board representatives, which included me and Paulina, and the authors of the petition, and 2 students who reached out and concerned to discuss their feelings. So we consider this a step in the right direction, as students were able to understand their teachers' intentions more clearly, and teachers and administrators were able to get the point of view of the students.
Any other questions?
How did you guys feel about the conversation? Were you well versed? I mean, a little history. The policy was changed, I heard, in 1998 by students, very similar doing the petition for seniors when they take for finals. They petitioned the principal and the area to change it in 1998 so that seniors, taking the finals, if they have a B or better, why should they take the finals? They're graduating anyways. So it was great to see that the student initiated this, and it's not the first time, and it's how I commend you all for the way it was done and respect that you worked through a change appropriately. So thank you.
Anyone else with questions?
I'm not so sure I agree with what Barry just said, but we'll leave that for later on in the meeting.
Okay. Okay, next we're up to the superintendent's report. Dr. Ficara?
Your mic is off.
I was wondering why I didn't get any response. Before I begin, I wanted to recognize Zach and Anne Marie for, this is their last official board meeting, and I want to thank them for their service. I've only worked with you for a very short period of time, but I've enjoyed your candor and dedication. So thank you, and good luck in your future endeavors. The other thing I wanted to talk about before I gave the report was I've been getting lots of inquiries about the snow and the weather. So we should actually not think of this much differently than we do in the past. I can't make a decision till we see what the weather actually does. I've been following it closely, as everyone has, and the forecast has been changing back and forth. The last I looked, it was not going to snow tomorrow, begin snowing tomorrow until 1. And then we will, we have virtual day K-8 on Wednesdays, and the high school's out at 12. And we have some elementary school students still in at 1:30. So if that forecast holds, and I will be watching it, so if that forecast holds, I don't anticipate any change for tomorrow. As far as Thursday, there are all sorts of dire predictions. And again, I will be watching and speaking to other superintendents and road department people, and watching the news, and working on my computer to follow the snow expectations and predictions. And essentially, everyone is asking, will there be a remote day if it's really bad versus a closed? And that too will be depend on the type of weather and the type of snow. So if there's really heavy, wet snow with lots of winds and they're predicting power outages, then that would affect our ability to have an all remote day, and we would have to have a closed day. So the bottom line is, I really can't tell you much right now, but I just want you to see how I'm thinking, and that rest assured we are paying attention. And I will be following it along with the other administrators who will be helping me. So I hope that gives some satisfaction or some understanding to what's going to happen. And who knows which way the wind blows, right? So we have tonight also a report for student safety data, which I'll go over with you briefly. And then a large segment of that is on the HIBs, and Alan has a rather extensive a report and analysis of that, which he'll explain to you. And then I'm going to ask after that for Karen to give us say a few words about the midterms and potential schedules going forward. So beginning with the student safety data system, we get data all the time, and we try to make some sense out of the data. And generally that means comparing one year over the next year. So when I looked back at the violence, vandalisms, weapons, and substance abuse aspect of the violence and vandalism report, if I look back 3 years, from 17-18 to 18-19, there seems to be an increase. Not quite sure what that increase is about, and that's something that we can look into. Sometimes increases are due to reporting, a more awareness or greater awareness and training and reporting incidences. From 2018 to 2019, there was a significant drop in every area, but we all know that school, for all intents and purposes of in-person school, where most incidences would take place, ended on March 4th. So we had still several months of school left. So that skews the data, and I really don't think we can make any comparisons between 2018 and 2018-19 and 2019-20. I also wanted to point out that on the as part of the student safety data system, there's a report that you may have noticed or may not have noticed about the trainings. It lists a number of trainings. And what you have is that Adamsville had 0 trainings or 0 programs for the entire 2019-20. And that's a mistake in reporting. And in fact, Adamsville had the most trainings and the most programs of any of the schools. It shows up, you see 0, 0, 0, and it should read, there were 8 trainings in period 1 and 50 programs, 6 trainings in period 2 and 50 programs, 14 trainings in the next period for 19-20, and 100 programs. The 100 programs is due to the fact that staff go actually into classrooms. So there weren't actually 150 school-wide programs. There were visits to classrooms. But it appears in the way it was reported and misreported that the folks at Adamsville didn't do anything when in fact they did a very, very good job. So I wanted to point that out. And part of this report looks at HIB. This year we did an analysis of our HIB program, our HIBs, the incidences. Alan, I shouldn't say we, I should say Alan and a team of school anti-bullying specialists from around the district. They analyzed the data and came up with certain conclusions and recommendations as to how the district should react going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alan.
Thank you very much. I'm going to report what Dr. Vicari had mentioned regarding HIB. We looked at data from the last 3 school years to just get a more comprehensive look as to what is going on within our school district. So we compared going back to the school year 2017-18 up until last year, 2019-2020. I believe that I'm capable of presenting because I do have a PowerPoint. I don't know if you all had a copy of that. But I believe I'm permitted and capable of presenting. So give me 1 second to do that, and then I'll bring up my PowerPoint, which will reveal the data and also my recommendations that came from that. So give me 1 second. Oh, wrong button. Okay. If someone can comment just to verify that you can see that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
we can see it, Alan. Yes.
You can. Okay. All right. I'm going to create the slideshow. Okay. There we go. All right. So again, myself and actually all of the school anti-bullying specialists in the school districts, which are essentially school counselors and student assistance counselors, we looked at all the data. So what we did was we compiled, taken data from each of the incidents that were reported over the last 3 years and broke it down into various data points, which I'm going to report and display to you this evening. So cumulatively, during the period 17 to 20, there were 294 HIB allegations were investigated. So essentially someone reported an incident, and then the follow-up was obviously a formal investigation based on the information that was presented in the report. and 294 allegations were investigated. Of those 294, 113 of those were determined to be HIB, which is roughly 38% of allegations, and 181 were determined non-HIB. So again, combining the 113, 181, there's 294 overall allegations that were investigated. Of those, during that period, 527 individuals were named. Now, these were all independent. There wasn't any overlap. So 527 different individuals, even if there were people or students that were named additional times as an aggressor or as a target, it still constituted 527 different individuals were named as either an aggressor or a target in an investigation. Of those 527 individuals, 488 were students, and 19 of those were staff members. Okay, and that's a cumulative report of what happened over the past 3 years. Then what we decided to do was break it down by school year. So if we go back 3 years in 27-18, 87 HIB allegations were investigated. Again, 34 were determined to be HIB, and 52 were determined to be non-HIB. Again, during that school year, there were 159 different individuals investigated or part of an investigation. 156 of those were students and 4 were staff members. Moving forward into 18-19, 117 allegations, 42 were HIB, 75 were determined non-HIB. Again, 223 individuals were interviewed or named in those allegations. Of those, 202 were students, 13 were staff members during that school year. Now, again, as Dr. Vaccaro had mentioned regarding another part of SSDS, last year was kind of an anomaly in the sense that school was in session for from September through March. So you'll see the number of HIB allegations decline, but that's only because we were not physically in school in a normal amount of months we would in a typical school year. 45 of those allegations were determined HIB and 28 were determined non-HIB. Now, keep in mind also that there were investigations or allegations that were made after the closing of school for COVID. So these were reports that were made to the principal, to individuals within the school districts, stating that my son or daughter was bullied, or allegations, an incident of bullying was reported. Again, 45 were determined HIB and 28 were determined non-HIB. So you can see a change there as well as regarding how many cases were determined to be HIB. And I think part of that is going to reflect in some of my recommendations that you follow later, because what was happening, there was some change in people were attending trainings. There was actually a training we had through our attorney, one of our board attorneys. So people were becoming more knowledgeable of the system or of the process, and court cases were beginning to influence some of their mindsets as far as whether something is determined in HIB or not. Again, last year 171 individuals were named, 160 students were a part of that, 6 staff members and 5 unknown. It might seem unusual to see unknown, but there were a couple incidents that happened. I know there was, I think, one at the high school and one at the middle school that I know of at least, where a student reported being harassed. And it actually, I think that it was found to be a confirmed HIB, but we couldn't determine who that was. It was just a report. Again, you're privy to those individual reports, so you may remember some of those particular cases. So that's the data as far as HIB versus non-HIB. Then what we did is we also looked at the characteristics, and I think this is important to look at as well, characteristics of incidents. And again, let me hide that so you can see my full slide. Again, what you're seeing is based on confirmed HIB incidents. These do not include the allegations that ended up to be determined non-HIB. So if a case was determined HIB, when we broke it down and looked at the characteristic that motivated the behavior by the aggressor, you'll see there's quite a variety of different characteristics that are mentioned. And this is actually a pared down version of what actually was reported. So, and again, I'll speak to that a little bit later in my recommendations, because this is something that we really need to focus on as a district in our investigation reports. But you'll see a lot of different things, but you'll see a lot also, many of the cases involve race, sexual orientation. You'll see a big piece of the pie that's entitled multiple characteristics, because the motivating characteristic of the target or towards the target may have involved race and sexual orientation, or it was multiple characteristics rather than one specific one. And that was determined by the investigation. And again, this is specific to the high school. In the next slide, you'll see that this is regarding the middle school. Again, the ABSs may be reporting the characteristics a little bit differently than the high school is. Again, it also be age related. Students in high school are a little more sophisticated in things and how they do and how they think. Again, multiple characteristics, appearance, and other. Okay, and that's others as reported by the ABS at the middle school. We go down another level to an intermediate level, again, other fat, multiple characteristics. What you'll also notice with this is that obviously the number of HIB cases, allegations confirmed non-HIB increase as students age. So you're going to see a lot more cases or allegations or incidents that occur at the high school level as opposed to an elementary level. It does happen at the elementary level, but not to the extent that it does at the high school for obvious reasons. And then if you look at the primary level, again, this is how it was reported by the ABSs related to intelligence, multiple characteristics. It could be any number of combination of those, other pieces of the pie as well. Moving on, to conclude, these are our recommendations based on the review of the data as reported in the incidents. First, again, use of a common consistent language. I kind of alluded to that earlier. I think it's important that ABSs, when they are conducting their investigations and they are writing their reports, that they're using a common consistent language. If it's something related to sexual orientation, then we should specify that. If it's related to race or to a racial issue, we should be very specific. And the language of the elementary or primary ABS should be the same in the report as it is for the high school ABS. So we need to be more consistent in how we do that. What we'll be able to do then is further examine our data and see if there's any other patterns as long as we're using the same language. Right now, it's kind of difficult because somebody may be terming or describing something differently at the elementary level than they may be at the high school level. So we need to be consistent with that. One of the more important things that I think that as a district we really need to do is implement a K-12 anti-bullying program. We have different character, ed, and climate. If you all remember, there was the One and All committee that began a couple years ago, which was focused on trying to develop, it was Start with Hello was kind of an impetus behind that through Sandy Hook, and trying to develop something K-12, elementary counselors, individuals, intermediate, middle school, and high school. The idea was good in that we were all going to try and unite and do something together to try and build climate, but I think it was also disjointed. Elementary counselors and staff were doing something, but there was no follow through from one level to the next. Everybody kind of did it piecemeal. So I think if we investigate and come up with and decide upon an evidence-based K-12 program so that staff, teachers, principals, support staff, whomever at the elementary school are using the same language as the high school chemistry teachers and the English teachers and the middle school staff as well. We're all approaching things in exactly the same way. Obviously, programs are going to vary in their intensity according to level and according to the needs of the school, but I think we need to have one single unifying program moving forward. We also need to focus on the recognition, acceptance, and importance of diversity, inclusion, and equity, with particular emphasis placed on racial and LGBTQ issues. If we go back to some of the pie charts, particularly at the high school, as I mentioned earlier, you'll see that a lot of the characteristics had to do were based on racial components or sexual orientation or sexual expression. So again, a lot of cases incidents were involving those particular areas. So yes, we want to include and celebrate our diversity, but we also want to target, what it is going on within our school district and or our community that may be contributing to some of this. So we need to examine that a little bit further, and we need to address that through various programs. We need to increase programs that address cyberbullying, although not displayed in my data tonight to you all, but an overwhelming majority of cases involve electronic media, social media. Kids are bullying each other in those methods, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or whatever system or software package app that they're using today. They're very savvy about it, and for some reason they think that they can get away with it, but they don't. That's a majority of the means of bullying occur via electronic devices. Improve increased parental involvement in anti-bullying efforts. We need to have their support. We need their input in how we can reduce the number of anti-bullying incidents that occur in our district. We need to focus on discipline as far as, involving the parents of students who are confirmed aggressors. We also need to involve the parents of targets, and how are we helping students who are the target of bullying and helping them to develop resiliency and learning to better cope with some of the things that may be going on in their lives, and especially if it's related to bullying. We need to examine patterns of aggressors. What's going on with these individuals that is contributing to this? Okay, why are they, why do they feel a motivation to act that way towards their peers? Okay, examination of HIP procedures with a goal to instill consistency in approach to investigations. Again, if we look at the implementation of the law over the past 12 years, if you recall back in 2009, 2010, when the law first came into effect, it was like anytime somebody said the word bullying, we have to investigate. And, we were very particular, and there was a large focus on protected class. And unless it met a protected class, then we couldn't call it an HIB. Well, that's grown as the law and the interpretations of the law and court cases related to the law have changed, as well as administration that has changed. And I'm not just talking about superintendents or anything like that. I'm just talking about, administrative responses to the process of investigations. I think we need to examine that much more closely. And again, with the goal to be consistent in how we are responding to allegations and reporting. And of course, finally, ongoing training for all staff in developing positive school climate and culture. And that ties into some of the district goals as well. If we look at SEL, goal number 2 and goal number 3, it all ties into that as well. So that was our recommendations coming out of review of the data. Any questions regarding the recommendations or any of the data that was viewed? I can go back to any screen if you all like. If not, I can stop sharing.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you currently meet with the ABSs as a group to review cases and how conclusions are reached? And or is that something that you're going to consider moving forward in order to increase consistency across the ABSs?
I've always met with the ABSs. I meet with them 3 times a year, regularly 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end of year. And a lot of times, we talk about the latest things that are going on, but also an opportunity for ABSs to share issues, share their reporting, any concerns that they may have. We've had trainings over the years with one of our board attorneys. A lot of the ABSs on their own initiative attend trainings in the community organizations regarding investigation, regarding the latest updates to HIB law and court cases related to that as well. So we do talk about it, but I think obviously what I'm saying, if you look at these recommendations, I need to have more conversations, more in-depth conversations with them regarding this, so that we can develop that consistency across all levels.
If I might add, the goal here was to do a deep dive into the data and then use that data to plan going forward to take the appropriate steps to target the areas that seem to be prevalent with either trainings and or programs for students and trainings for staff. And as Alan pointed out, one of the first things we realized or the team realized when they looked at the data was the data itself needed an overhaul so that the data could be categorized into consistent areas that were identified. Because if you look at the high school, we're all over the map, and that makes it harder for us to accumulate data going forward. So there's a lot of work going forward, and we're gonna use the data to create and react to help the culture, improve the culture, which is one of the purposes of the HIB law to begin with.
It looked like there was a lot related to weight/appearance. What did those numbers look like overall?
I can't speak to exact numbers. I don't have that data in front of me. But again, it's, like, for example, we're looking at primary level right now, gender identity and expression, natural origin, other fat. Again, there weren't that many cases at the intermediate level. So it kind of seems like, oh, wow, 50% of the cases, but that may be a very small number in comparison. Appearance, again, at the middle school, that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be also related to gender expression. If a male is dressing effeminate, maybe they were being bullied, maybe they were targeted because of that, or for some other reason. Looking at the high school, we're all over the place with that.
Yeah, I just as a quick glance, and again, I don't know how the numbers break down, but it does look to me like appearance related things are pretty significant as well.
Right. I would agree.
For some reason, Jackie, I thought it was upward around 13%, which is one of the bigger on one of the slides. It was pretty big. You're right.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
Sure.
Jill.
Well, okay, so the slide that's on now, the high school, I guess that's what Dr. Fakar said is all over the place. Is that what you meant? I'm meaning there's
Yeah. So I think that the teams need to work together to condense the number of categories. So because I believe some of them, just by looking at them quickly, are very, very nuanced and then broken down, gender and perceived sexual behavior, sexual orientation. And we have appearance and a variety of things that could be condensed down. The whole idea is so when we look at the data, it makes sense to us, and we can start to move in a certain direction, move or target areas of the culture. When it's completely, I don't know how many items we have here, but that it dilutes it to a degree.
in my opinion, and I don't mean to go against what you guys were thinking, but I find it much more helpful to see the breakdown in this much, and rather than like the middle school had two things, I think, or was it the intermediate? I'm not sure. I think it's important. Middle school had three, but that too. I know there are fewer at the intermediate level, but I'm not understanding why for this report, or is it just a matter of does it take more time to review these, to pull out what they were based on? How does the high school have the detail and the other schools don't have the detail for this report?
Well, I think that goes back to training. I recall a training that we had a number of years ago with one of our board attorneys, in which he pretty much said to the staff, and it was ABSs across the district, that pretty much anything can be a characteristic. So they kind of took liberty with that at the high school, and took that very, very literal. That, as you can see, annoying behavior in 2009. That wouldn't have been necessarily an HIB case because that didn't fall into a protected class, which is what the law initially said. But again, as time has gone by and the courts have been involved in cases related to HIB, they've kind of loosened the description of what perceived characteristics can be. They've kind of broadened that term. So that's why you see annoying behavior on there. You see untrustfulness.
Right. I see. I can understand those two are kind of that extra stuff, but I think seeing, perceived weakness to me would be important to know, even though it's 3%, but that's still like showing a power difference, a power struggle.
Correct.
So, well, I'm glad this is being addressed, and I would love to see a K to 12 evidence-based program to be, consistent and hopefully get these numbers down for the future.
Sure. May I stop presenting, or did anybody have any questions regarding any of the slides?
Yes, I have questions. The data put in there is that I'm sure that because the HIB is not like just falling into one category, right? So one HIB case can be falling into different categories in this pie chart.
No, it's not. So if there were multiple characteristics, as you can see in this particular chart in the lower right-hand corner, that may have involved some of the other characteristics that were listed there as well. It's just that the ABS, who wrote the report, didn't specify one specific characteristic as the basis for the motivation of the behavior toward them. So, for example, I know of one case where it was racial and gender expression. Those happen to be a couple of the characteristics that the aggressor was motivated to the behavior towards. So rather than having 5 other pieces of the pie in there, one that says race and gender, race and familial relationships, we categorize those as multiple characteristics.
Okay, and then also so from each different level of school, that it is done by a different person, right? The evaluation.
Sure.
For the reported cases.
Yes, each school has its own anti-bullying specialist. In some schools, there's multiple anti-bullying specialists, and they conduct the investigations themselves. No one does it across building levels.
So that said that if each person has different assessment skills, that the data can vary very widely.
True.
Right?
I mean, that's exactly correct. That's the need. That's part of the recommendations and having that consistent language. And then also, it was in the, again, examining the procedures with goal and, to instill consistency in approach.
Okay. And also, Alan, when I was looking at the incident report, that I found that around K to 6, K to 6, in Hillside has, a lot of cases compared to the rest of the schools, and for 2 years. So it takes about like 40 to 50% of the whole entire K to 6. I don't know if you pay attention to this, and that raises my concern, because if this is just like, if the school tends to report, even small cases, then that drives the number high. But if they are reporting on the similar criteria, then that number is pretty high compared to the rest of the school.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Mr. Iacchini?
I just want to make sure I understood something, and if I understood it right, I have a statement. This start with hello hasn't gone anywhere. Is that right? They haven't really.
Well, it was going somewhere. We started that about 2 years ago, and at the different levels, they were implementing some version of that into the curriculum for climate. It kind of somewhat went by the wayside as we went to virtual last year.
Okay.
And counselors were still implementing classroom lessons. They were focusing on varying things, but a lot of the things were in-school initiatives, and they kind of were
Okay,
They kind of went away, and then this year there wasn't any. There hasn't been a.
Can can I interject on that point?
Sure.
Anne-Marie, just so you're aware that those kind of disconnected things that we had going on, like pieces of things in different schools, have all been gathered under goal 2 right now that the district set. And so when we created that action plan, we took things like Start with Hello, or, you know, different SEL programs that were going on in the different schools, and put like an umbrella and structure over it, so that you know, what we're trying, and we've been having weekly meetings, which we'll be reporting out on at some point where we are with each of our goals. Because what we're trying to do is take pieces that maybe you were only really deeply aware of if you were on that committee, and create a structure around it so that, you know, everyone will be aware of all the different initiatives going on, and they'll all connect. And so earlier I heard Alan say in the presentation that many of the things he's talking about actually connect to 2 of our district goals. The one that's on SEL, and then the third one, which is really on inclusivity and diversity. So there were some disconnected things that we're bringing together.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
What are the next steps forward, and how do we see the progress going on? You know, Karen mentioned it sounds like you put structure together. So, but just wondering.
So the idea, Barry, is that this is step 1 into doing a deep dive into to examining what our district looks like in the results that we got back by looking at the various types of cases, and then trying to focus on what we think our weaknesses are and where we need the most attention, both and also by level, because of course we have different problems at different levels. And then we're going to be asking the anti-bullying specialists, along with Alan, to develop to look into, you know, what would be a good evidence-based program for anti-bullying for the district. What programs are there out there that target race and LGBTQ issues, or diversity, or appearance issues? So the idea is that we have to know what's going on by looking at the data, and then design programs to remediate our strengths and highlight our weaknesses.
I had one question back to the SSDS data. My concern that the data in there had the Adamsville training at 0. Did we verify that the rest of the data is correct?
Yes, the rest, it is correct. Unfortunately, we cannot change it except for the Adamsville data. It's submitted incorrectly. We can change it for our reporting purposes to the board and on our website, but unfortunately it's going to remain in the state database as a 0.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I always might look at that going, well, can I trust the other numbers too? And did we verify it? So I just wanted to make sure the data we have has been verified, less the zeros. Okay.
Yes, there was just an error in reporting that.
And I'm sure there's many boxes you check differently and it goes sideways, you know, so I understand. Thank you.
And I don't know if you can go back the slides for the accumulated one from 18 through 20, was it 17? The number count, not the charts. Yeah, I think it doesn't add up. Maybe this is something that we need to, one before. This one too, this one has problems. So if you're looking at the 223 individuals and you have 202 students, you have only 13 staff members, that adds up to 215, not 223, unless.
That's probably an error on my part in putting it together.
And then there's 2 other slides that have the same issue. It doesn't add up. So if you maybe just want to check the accumulated one, if you go back the slides at 102. Yes, this one doesn't add up too. This is the addition should be 507, not 527.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and there's another one, I think. Probably 19 to No, the current one is fine. I think it's the one before.
I think the bottom line is to just validate the numbers.
Yes, exactly.
I guess we need to make sure the data is valid as we look at the SSD data. So we should look at the HIB data. So the same way.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one quick thing. The reporting, you said that, you know, you wanted to make it so it's consistent across all the schools. Is there guidance that comes out from the state or somewhere else that tells you, gives you some ideas, suggestions, or do we have to adopt that? Because I think that's a great idea to do that across all the districts.
There is some guidance in New Jersey. DOE puts out some guidance for school districts in handling HIB. And the Principal and Supervisors Association has a pretty extensive training program. So that's an area we have to look at because we need to be consistent in data if you're going to analyze the data.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one. Over the last 30 years, do you think there's been an increase in certain characteristics in HIB reports?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say I haven't been here long enough to answer that. Okay.
I think it's always been pretty much the same thing. A lot of bullying incidents revolve around gender expression and identity. I think racial type of issues are becoming more pronounced for whatever reason. It could be society, it could be whatever, it could be made up of many different factors. I think you have your standard, appearance. Kids have always been making fun of each other because of the way they look forever. I think that we're becoming more sophisticated in some of our means of bullying and how we bully. And we're also, you're starting to see as society changes and recognizes and accepts individual differences, that there's always those individuals who do not accept those differences. So therefore they target those that they see as different from them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. I just wanted to mention, I think it's great to see this broader view of what's going on with HIB. So I really appreciate your putting this together and helping us, I think, attack this more on a global level. So this is great. Dr. Ficara, did you have anything else for?
Yes, we have a few more things. We won't be too long, just some quick notes. But also, I realized when looking back at my own note that I forgot to also mention that today was Dr. Gina Villani's last day working for the Bridgewater-Raritan School District. She moved on to be a superintendent of schools at the Jamesburg School District, and we wish her well. And now I'm just going to ask that Karen give us a brief overview, or I wouldn't even call it an overview, but just a little bit of a
context
on what's going on with midterms and what's going on with scheduling.
Okay, and I will do my best to keep it brief, but I'm going to try to create a little context for you. Bye, Alan. A little context for you because I feel like there's a misconception out there about kind of what midterms are, the purpose, why we're doing it, what the approach is. And so I also commend the students for, reaching out about it when they have concerns. So I'm going to try to explain the purpose of midterms, and then, you can, if you have questions, ask them. But the primary purpose of midterms always, right, is to assess student learning over the course of a semester. And so what's important for you to realize is that when we were doing instruction last year, when we canceled the final exams, we canceled final exams because we weren't doing live instruction. So I don't know, we were posting things, and really we went out during the third marking period. And so that's what kind of caused that emergency. Going into this year, however, we've been doing instruction every day. And so even in the road back guidance to us, it was really important that we're able to assess whether or not students are meeting standards. And so when we say we're giving midterms don't have to be like this test where you're memorizing a bunch of information and frantically and trying to make sure that you have everything memorized from the first 2 marking periods and you're spitting it back. And so we left it very open to the high school administration to work with teachers to create midterms that make sense in this kind of hybrid virtual model. So the best example I can give, and I gave this last night at the academic committee, is with English, because I was an English teacher and an English supervisor, and then I can kind of move from there a little bit, is that, you know, years ago when we were teaching English, we were teaching kids the book, right? So I was the teacher and I was telling you, here's the symbolism in The Great Gatsby, and this is what the theme is. And then when you'd go to test students, you were asking them to spit back all this information to you. That shift happened years ago as far as the standards in New Jersey. And, you know, instruction has to follow that, of course, and assessment has to follow that. And so what students should be doing, right, is learning how to do these things. So you're not learning a book anymore, you're learning how to analyze a book. And so when you go to take a midterm, the midterm shouldn't be about how much of this do I have memorized and how much can I repeat back what my teachers told me over the last 2 semesters. It has to be, I've learned how to analyze, and now I can use that skill on something I've never read before, and I can tell you, you know, what the symbolism is, and I can tell you how the symbolism connects to the theme. Now, this works across all content areas, right? So all content areas, even if we think about our initiatives at the primary school right now, and how we, for 2 years now, have been talking about shifting from kind of traditional grading to standards-based grading, right? Because what we're trying to do is teach kids to problem solve and to critically think. The standards in science changed several years ago, and we went to NGSS, and right, so that again is about your ability to take all these different resources and kind of create your problem and then problem solve through it. History, if you think about the way we teach history, right, US 1, a midterm doesn't have to be that you're repeating back all this memorized information and facts and who did this during which time period, because right now, and we know this, especially now when we're in this virtual hybrid model, you could look all these things up on a computer. That's not the type of thinking that we're trying to instill in students. Like, you want people to be able to use all different resources. So I think where this conversation started in high school, and it was way back in October, was when we were first trying to figure out how to assess kids, because there was a concern about academic integrity and what if people cheat. Well, the answer to that is to shift the way that we assess, okay? Because if you have a 90-minute period or a 60-minute period and you say to students, you know what, I'm going to give you 2 resources you've never seen before in history, a primary resource, secondary resource, and I'm going to ask you this question. It's called like a DBQ, a document-based question, and you can pull from that everything you learned during the first semester in those first 2 marking periods, and you're going to combine your own thinking that you have from everything you learned with this brand new thing I'm showing you, and you're going to write about a problem. That's how we're assessing students. It's how we know they're meeting standards. It's how we know they understand the skills and strategies that we're teaching. And so that is the value of a midterm. And right now, while we're in a virtual hybrid model, one could argue that it's almost more important that we're doing this because you have to regularly assess. We have to see where we are at this point in the year. Now, there's a larger question here, and I know Barry has brought this up before, and you kind of gave us context for years ago and changing things the senior year. But when we're giving exams, it's really not about preparing kids for college. Does it prepare kids for college? Yes, because they'll have to do these practices there as well. But that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to assess where they are, for them to have that practice. And then the midterm should never just be a standalone test. It should be something that we're using then to make decisions, to inform instruction as we move forward. With that said, where students, I think, get stressed out is I think the way that midterms, have existed and the way that we're probably all still thinking about them to some degree is that it's just a whole bunch of stuff you have to go back and memorize all at once, and you're frantically trying to figure out how you're going to chunk your studying so that you can be successful in each one of your courses. Our conversations with the supervisors and teachers has really been, how can we design assessments differently? And we have to design them differently because we're not teaching in the same way we traditionally taught, and we may not even be able to cover all the material that we have traditionally covered at this point in the year. So there's no specific way that's coming anyway from our conversations in central office to the high school where these have to be designed. They have to be designed in a meaningful way. It could be things done in advance. In a math class, conceivably, you could have a problem and you're asked, solve this problem 2 different ways, and then explain which method you think works better and why you would use that, or where you would use this problem solving versus that one. Because again, the important thing isn't that you have the formulas memorized and you're plugging things in, it's that you understand the conceptual thinking. And so that's the conversation that we've been having. And to me, in talking with students about this, where we can de-escalate some of the anxiety that people might be feeling is in knowing that, you know, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're prepared in class and you're engaged and you're interacting, you're going to be able to show what you've learned. You're going to be able to demonstrate and apply these skills. So to go back to what I was saying, Barry, this could be something that could be a larger conversation at some point. Can you change this and structure it in a different way? Yeah, if you look at other school districts, there are school districts who have, you know, quarterlies instead of having something in a midterm. Some have quarterlies without a final, some still have a final exam. This is a discussion that can be had, and it can involve teachers and administrators and students, and it can be a thoughtful discussion about how we are going to design assessments in this district and how we're going to use them at the high school level. But for now, our conversation was really about, while we're teaching in this way, how will the assessments look? And honestly, this is another example of something kind of forcing us to look at things in a different way that might actually move us in a really positive direction. So that's kind of my overview and context for midterms. I don't know if it helps or if people have questions.
I have one about, I mean, I don't know if this actually should be a board policy or not, to be honest. Whether is it something the board needs to say, and then even the grading side of it. That's my question, you know, and from that, and these are longer discussion items also. Yep. So
yeah,
I'm glad this is going on, because I mean, some of the anxiety comes from that for kids too. So thank you for addressing this. I'm proud that you've been working on this, and the staff, and I'm sure they're getting where it goes. And, you know, I think it's a process that we're going through. I think it's fantastic.
It is a process, and for staff too, I think, you know, you're shifting your thinking a little bit, and we're shifting our thinking, you know, during a pandemic. And I think just that in and of itself causes some stress, but, you know, we're trying to create an assessment that's meaningful and that students will be able to use themselves to reflect on and kind of grow from. So we're in the process, and the conversations are happening.
Okay, you want to move into scheduling?
Did you have a question, Steve?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Not all of us have high school students, so I didn't receive a copy of the petition, and I did not directly receive a copy of the response from the administration. So if you could send that out to the rest of the board as well, that might be helpful.
Dr. Ficarra, we have that, right? Are you addressing the students or us? I'm sure we have it still.
I was addressing the administration.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Sure.
We'll find it.
We will locate it and send it to you. Yes.
Thank you.
I think most of the petition really focused on the stress level that students were feeling, and probably that unknown of, oh, we have these exams every year and this is what they're looking like, and how are we going to do it now when we're in the hybrid virtual model? And the way is we're going to change the exams so they make sense for the hybrid virtual model.
Understood, and I appreciate what you're doing. I did see the response, but I didn't get it directly, and I think I'm looking forward to what happens.
Okay, so thank you. So I'm going to move on to schedule, if that's okay, because we've also been getting some questions from parents and just wondering kind of where we are with now that we've been in hybrid for a little while and if we've been reflecting on our schedule. And so what it's important to know is that, yes, we currently have committees operating at every level. So primary, intermediate, middle school, high school. And the committees include a combination of building administrators and supervisors and teaching staff. And we're reaching out, well, their teaching staff should be on them at this point. And we're also creating surveys for teaching staff. And what we want to do is look at the success of our schedules at this point, how effective they are, and where we can make changes. That'll be a little bit different, like the feedback probably at each level, because the schedules are currently different. So that's one thing we're looking at. Another thing we're just looking at is, we've had a couple times now where the high school and or the middle school has kind of pivoted into 2 weeks of virtual instruction. So the second thing we're looking at is when that happens, would we continue with the structure of the schedules that we have, or would we change the structure on those days? And the third thing that we're looking at is are there ways that we can use some of the afternoon time to either target instruction for students who might be struggling, or to increase instructional time, especially in courses that are like a math course that's very linear, and we want to make sure that students get all the foundational skills that they're going to need by the end of the year. So that's going on right now at every level. We're not making any changes until we would want to see that there are no longer there's not a rise in COVID cases, that we've had questions about collapsing cohorts. And that's another thing that while we're thinking about all these things now, so we're ready to go with phasing different aspects in, we're not actually making the changes until we know that, it's safe to do so. And then of course we would be making the recommendations to Dr. Ficarra and the board. So we're looking to do that in January.
We wanted to thank you, Karen. We wanted to point out to the board and to the public that people are making observations, parents are making observations where we have small numbers of students in school in some classrooms. And hey, why not combine classrooms and give children more time in person or extend the day? And we are looking at a whole variety of options of, as we begin to plateau, will we be able to phase in a longer school day, or combining classes and having more frequent attendance for in-person school? So we're trying to get ahead of the curve. The problem is right now, we're contact tracing on a daily basis, and we've moved from moderate to high in terms of the COVID situation. So we're not prepared to start adding or crowding, making classes have more people in them than they have now when we're in a spiking period. So at the same time, we don't want to wake up one day and find out, if all our hopes come true, that the vaccine is working and the weather kicked in and got a little warmer, and suddenly the number of cases are plateauing and we're feeling comfortable in increasing instructional time. We want to have a plan that we don't have to make up overnight the way we did over the summer when the rules were given to us on June 29th and we were told we had to open by September 8th. So we're working on that now with committees and getting input, and hopefully brighter days will come and we'll be prepared to, whether we phase it in. I doubt we're going to go from one day hybrid to all in person the next day. So we anticipate this will probably come back gradually, and we want to be prepared to do that. So we just wanted to make sure that while many of the questions that we're getting from parents, some emails, they're good questions and we're thinking of the same thing. We just want to put it in context. So that's all for my report at this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ficarra, Mr. Aikini, and Ms. Jones for sharing the information with us. Next, On behalf of the board, I wanted to say goodbye to Dr. Villani, the Assistant Superintendent of Personnel. As Dr. Ficara mentioned earlier, she will be leaving the district. She has been a great asset to the district in her work, both in a personal as well as, both in personnel as well as safety and security over the past few years. She worked extensively with state officials and security experts to establish a plan to improve the safety of our schools, some of which have already been implemented. In addition, she significantly improved the processes and procedures for running the HR department and was very instrumental in getting the district's job descriptions updated. Her professionalism, positive attitude, and attention to detail will be missed. We wish her the very best in her future endeavors. And I don't know if she's out there, but hopefully she is. And as I said, we just want to wish her the very best. Mr. Stars, next, I wanted to do the board member recognitions, starting with Anne Marie. So I want to recognize and thank two board members for their service, Anne Marie Mead and Zach Malik, whose last board meeting is tonight. And I think Mr. Stars is going to share Anne Marie's plaque here that she will be receiving. Anne Marie has served 3 terms on the board as the Raritan representative, as well as 2 years as board president, chairing and participating in committees while working full-time and raising a family. She has been a strong advocate for controlling our budget to minimize the impact to taxpayers while still providing valuable opportunities such as bowling so that more students have an opportunity to be engaged in school activities. While she looked to be fiscally responsible, it was balanced with the perspective to ensure students' needs were still met. In addition, we could always count on Anne Marie to ask well thought out questions to the administration and others to help us all in the decision-making process. And so again, we see the plaque up on the screen. And next, I'd like to move on to Zach. He has served 1 term on the board, participating on the personnel committee his first year, and then chairing the academic committee these last 2 years, while balancing full-time college studies. As a recent graduate of our school district, he has been a welcome addition, providing an important dimension to our decision-making, as well as serving as a role model to our student body. He has been a vocal and passionate board member, and most importantly, helped raise our awareness of issues faced by students of color. He has demonstrated a sense of responsibility and maturity well beyond his years. Our future is in great hands with people like Zach. And we can see Zach's plaque up on the board. We will greatly miss both Anne Marie and Zach's contributions and perspectives on the board. Thank you both for volunteering to serve Bridgewater Raritan Regional School District. Would any other board members like to say anything?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Jill.
All right. Very well spoken, Ms. Barlow. First, I wanted to wish Dr. Villani well in her next position as superintendent of that, I believe, Jamesburg district, and she will be missed. She did so much. As I was brought on to, I was on personnel, but chaired it the last few months. I saw her attention to detail and professionalism up close, so she'll be missed. And Anne Marie and Zach, I mean, Jackie put it so well, but Anne Marie, you've been around not 3 terms, 9 years is a long time. So it was really terrific personally working with you. We had agreements and disagreements, but always mutual respect. And so really miss working with you. And Zach, amazing that you won at the age of 18 or so, put a spot on the board. You've grown into a terrific board member and leader. And I agree with Jackie that I don't remember the exact words, but wherever you end up, they'll be lucky to have you on their side as an advocate. So I enjoyed working with you for the past 3 years.
Jackie?
Yes.
I also want to say well said. And I think I've said this before, but when I was asked to run for the board, how many million years ago, a friend of mine on a board in another town said, you have to do it because it's a life enriching experience. And I think the most enriching part for me has been getting to know some individuals that I would have not otherwise known as not just colleagues, but then they become friends. And I believe that my life has been enriched by knowing Anne Marie and Zach, and I will miss them very much. And I hope that they stay involved and stay in touch.
Anyone else? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Hey, Jackie? Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to say something. Although I'm very new and I'm not with this board for too many months, but I just want to say something. For Anne-Marie, I think that just the way she speaks is always firm and very expressive and serious. And I really admire her logic, the way of thinking. And because I could tell when she speaks, it's definitely from a totally different perspective and different view. But that always, give me, it really initiate me some different type of perspective and thoughts. So I really enjoy having her and enjoy listening to her. And with Zach, I think that again, he's just so young, and I really admire his courageous, being aboard with so many experienced board members here and with old people like me. But I'm saying he has a good future, and that definitely he can bring a lot of experience from being the board member and continue with his journey. Good luck.
Thank you. And next, lastly, we continue to receive many communications regarding how we handle COVID-related items. I would like to reiterate that with regards to decisions concerning areas like in-person, hybrid, and remote learning, contact tracing, etc., the administration works hand in hand with our local health officials. While the final decision rests with Dr. Ficara, expertise from our local health officials is critical input. Doing what is in the best interest of the whole district weighs heavily on their minds, as there is no easy answers or perfect decisions to make all happy. As COVID continues to surge, please maintain your vigilance in following CDC and our governor's guidelines. Wishing you a happy and healthy holiday season. Next, we are up to, yes.
Can I say something since it's my last meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
It is time for me to move on to a different phase in my life. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the people of Raritan for allowing me this opportunity to serve. I appreciated every minute of it. That is not to say I enjoyed every minute of it, but I appreciated every minute of it. And please know that to the best of my ability, I upheld high standards and worked in facts, not emotion. We all know that I call things out and that I say it like I see it. And it was not always easy to do, and it wasn't always welcome, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because it was important to do so. To that end, Lynn Hurley, you have no idea how much I needed and appreciated your support. Even when we didn't agree, which was rare, I will always remember that and forever be grateful for it.
Same.
This district is not perfect, but it is exceptional. I have had or have 3 children in various stages or long gone from this district, and I could not have asked for a better education. And to that end, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone, the teachers, the BREA, the staff, office support, bus drivers, nurses, facilities, everyone. Because at the end of the day, It is you who impact the students the most. And so as I leave, I wish those around this table and those that follow nothing but success. Please have faith in the students. Challenge them. I believe they are up to the challenge. It is a tough world out there, and they step into that world as soon as their time in this district is done. Good luck and goodbye. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Anyone else? And very well said.
I actually also wanted to talk. I didn't really know
Sure.
when to say that. But it's been an honor to serve as a Board of Education member and academic committee chairman. I want to thank the administration and board members I've had a pleasure to serve with. The community members of Bridgewater who took a chance on an 18-year-old high school graduate to be given this opportunity. My friends and family for supporting me these past 3 years. In addition, the teachers who helped shape me into who I am today. And I want to recognize and thank the hard work and dedication that every staff member, administrator, and Board of Education member puts into their work to provide a high quality education for all students. Serving on the board was Serving on the board, I was able to see how much the district does for students in a way I was unable to fully appreciate as a student. I'm sad to see Anne Marie leave the board, and I'm thankful for all of the work she has done to help improve the district and the ability to serve by her. And I want to wish the best of luck to Jessica Levitt and Lucy Sandler in their upcoming roles. When I was younger, I never really understood why my parents would always talk about how fast time flies. And now that I'm older, I do understand what they were talking about. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for believing in me and giving me this opportunity to give back to BRRSD, and I will cherish this experience for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Very well said, Zach. And thank you again to both of you. It's been a pleasure working with both of you. Next, we are up to the Vice President's report. Do you have anything today?
Just real quick, in December on our calendar, we had a retreat last week, and to report on board goals, we're supposed to report on December, but we decided the board retreat that's starting January, actually, before we approve the next calendar board meetings, which I see it on tonight, but I think it's just a draft. I'm not sure if we're approving that or we prove it next time, but we should put in there quarterly when we're going to review those goals. So it says that we have to report on board goals, but we decided to push it up to January and then at subsequent meetings throughout the year so we don't lose track. And that's it. We just had a board self-assessment at the retreat. Nothing else to report for December.
Thank you, Ms. Gladstone. I think later on in the agenda, we can talk about the calendar.
Yep.
Next, we are up to the committee reports, and the first one is with Mr. Malik. So your final committee report for academic.
We met on December 14th, so yesterday at 6:30. In attendance was myself, Ms. Gladstone, Ms. Hurley, Ms. Jones, Dr. Ficara, and Ms. Kochis. First, we went over the Go Guardian Teacher. Ms. Kochis shared a presentation explaining how Go Guardian Teacher can be used safely to support instruction. Go Guardian Teacher is a digital learning tool used to support students in a virtual/remote learning environment. Go Guardian Teacher allows for a remote real-time view of a student's Chrome web browser when they are logged into Chrome using their BRRSD Google account. With Go Guardian, teachers and students can chat one-to-one. Teachers can monitor individual student progress in real time. While in an active Go Guardian session, teachers have the ability to close Chrome tabs, push out websites to students' Chrome web browser, and lock the student's web browser as needed. The district has enabled privacy features such as when a teacher has an active session, students will be notified with a pop-up text box on their Chrome web browser, which can be moved and released into a bubble. In addition, teachers are limited in their time when they can activate a session, so they can only have a session from 7 to 4 Monday to Friday. And the Google Guardian Chrome extension will turn green during an active session. The recommendation is to activate Go Guardian Teacher in grades 5 through 8 as part of the one-to-one initiative beginning in January. Prior to break, communications will go out to parents, students, and staff provide additional professional development sessions for staff and administrators. In late January or early February, they will reflect on the process and tools and determine whether to continue with a pilot in other grades. Next, we went over the review of textbook list. The committee reviewed changes to the textbook list in preparation for the annual BOE adoption of textbooks, which will take place at the January board meeting. The only changes were the adoption of new mathematics textbooks, which was a recommendation that came out of the program evaluation, and a handwriting book that is used in grade 3. A committee member suggested that when the full board receives the list in advance of the January meeting, changes are tracked so it's easier to review. There's no recommendations at this time. Next, we went over the program of studies. The committee reviewed a draft of the program of studies for 2021-2022. There are minimal changes. One change is the addition of Introduction to Guitar, which is currently running and was recommended through the program evaluation in the spring of 2020. There was a recommendation that the language in the description that states, quote, should have access to a guitar, end quote, is changed to, quote, recommended that, end quote. It was also suggested that electives include a description of how a course may prepare students for certain career pathways. All BOE members will receive a copy of the updated draft with tracking of changes for review. Recommendation, language is being reviewed for Intro to Guitar as suggested, with an additional statement that students will be provided with a guitar for practice should they need one. Other suggestions will be shared with the high school administration. Next, we received a hybrid and virtual learning update. Dr. Ficara and Ms. Jones shared updates, including an overview of scheduling discussions, which are currently happening at each level. The administrative teams continue to explore potential schedule changes at each level, with the goal being to increase instructional time and or provide additional opportunities for students. Committees are discussing student engagement, student attendance, participation, grades, and pacing. The goal is to share any scheduling recommendations with the BOE by January. Recommendations should include changes to the structure of the current schedules, increase in instructional time during virtual only instruction, or using afternoon time differently. In addition, if and when there is a plateau in the number of COVID cases and it is safe to do so, we will consider combining cohorts. One board member asked about snow days, and Dr. Ficara informed the committee about the administration's planning. And another board member brought up mental health and the importance of teacher flexibility. The committee discussed the importance of recognizing the unique stress students are currently under and discussed midterms and academic goals. There were no recommendations at the time. The review of the academic calendar, there is no discussion, and the recommendation was to move calendar discussion to January. We adjourned at 8:11. Any questions?
Zach, I have a couple questions. With regard to Go Guardian, I understand the desire to keep it at 5 to 8 in order to ensure we use the Chromebooks that are one-to-one. Are we restricting kids from using non-district Chromebooks in that case, or how would this work with non-district Chromebook, not just non-district laptops?
Karen?
So what we would be doing is, and when we send a letter home to parents, we would be advising parents that we would want them to use district issue Chromebooks. We would explain that because I mean, it could happen even like, let's say your Chromebook dies and you can't find where your charger is and a student logs into their home laptop. What we would need to do is provide information in a letter to parents so they understand that the only thing the teacher would be able to see would be tabs that would be open in the web browser, the Chrome web browser that the student logs in using their school, their school login. The only complicating factor in something like that would be if a student forgets to log out and then the parents started using the computer with the student still logged in, and use the same browser. So that's what we would want to caution parents about. But what we would advise is that students are using their district issued Chromebook, which is why we're only starting in 5-8, because that's where we're one-to-one.
Right, and that's
yes.
That's what I was assuming, and I look forward to seeing the letter because I think that needs to be very much detailed. In addition, the scheduling that we're talking about that's going to come to the board in early January, is that something that we're hoping to come to the board? Will we be discussing that at the reorganization meeting? or do we need to have another meeting scheduled? Because I don't think we have another meeting in January until after marking period 3 starts. And I imagine if there are changes that can be implemented, we want to discuss it before the marking period starts again.
So I will defer to Dr. Ficarra on that one for timelines for discussion changes in scheduling.
Yes, we would, of course, bring that to the board for approval. And depending on how quickly things happened, it could be asking for a special meeting if the circumstances happened in that rapidly. But we don't anticipate that, but we're just, the whole idea is we're anticipating that brighter days are coming, and we don't want to be hustling around trying to think things through the last minute. So we're just trying to get as much advanced planning in as possible.
Sure, and I'm not talking about changing from hybrid to anything else or combining cohorts anyway. I'm talking about utilization of remote instruction in the afternoons or some other options that might be available that we could implement sooner rather than later. I just want to make sure that it's not going to be a timing issue for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of that we probably have the ability to do unilaterally because we would still be operating within the contract. And of course, we would keep the board informed, and if necessary, if we felt we wanted a full board meeting to approve it, we could do that too.
I had a question on Go Guardian. Can you share the presentation with the full board? I'd like to see how it works a little bit.
So what I can do actually is I can put it into the board drive tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'll put it all in there.
And I also, I never found out the cost implications of it. What is it costing the district per license or use? Or I never.
So I don't know what the individual licenses are, but the cost for a 5.8, for the number of students on the devices we have was a little over $9,000. I think 9,400, something like that. Right. If we went on to, and it's, paid through the end of the year, if we went on to pilot at other grade levels, sometimes when you're doing piloting, you're not really paying an additional price for that purpose. But again, we wouldn't make that decision about other grade levels until we, see how this first round goes.
Is there any, I think, I don't know if there's an answer to the presentation. What's the added technology needs from the district for this? Is there a new server? Is it bandwidth limitation on the Chromebooks, or, what is there's going to be an added need of speed for this, I would imagine, because it's another video processing is quite a bit now. What else is going to be there, both in a bandwidth standpoint and also needs from tech?
We had that discussion last night, and as far as I can recall, there would be no additional bandwidth because it would be all in Google.
Which failed on Monday, right?
Globally, though, we didn't do that.
Yeah, I know that. I'm just saying.
Not in our district. That's
right. And were there other products that do this out there that we looked at? Why go Guardian over the other products?
That was discussed briefly as well. That the feeling was that we wanted to stay within Google Classroom and not pick a product that was going to have to be used outside.
Go Guardian is under Google?
Yes.
Okay, so that was
compatible with it. Yes.
Is it owned by Google or compatible?
I think it's.
I don't know. Is it?
Well, I don't really know the finances, but it strikes me that if it's made to operate on a Chromebook, that it was probably operated or introduced by Google.
Okay.
If not, they bought the company that introduced it.
Or they will, one or the other.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Lots of questions. I'll look at the presentation. I'll get back to you. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Next, we are up to Mr. Joshi with the community relations.
Yeah, I have nothing to report. We're going to reconvene in January.
Okay. Thank you. And I should have thanked Mr. Malik for his final presentation. And next, we've got Finance, Facilities, and Transportation with Mr. Walker.
Yes, we met on Monday, December 7th at 6:30 p.m. In attendance was Mrs. Mead, Mr. Singer, Mr. Stars, and Dr. Vaccaro. The first item on the agenda we discussed was the preliminary actions for items you'll see. We're purchasing a new truck and the application for the county cares funding on the agenda. Our recommendation was that the community support the actions needed. We also had this conversation about the NJ employee health plan. Mr. Stars provides with the update of the open enrollment to the New Jersey Health Educators Plan and the theoretical budgetary impacts. There's no recommendation at this time. We had a question of the enrollment review. Mr. Stars shared a comparison from the snapshot window from 10-15-19 and the 10-15-20 enrollment, the numbers by grade level, along with the information concerning the students' withdrawal list. The documents, there was a significant reduction, and it was, a lot based on the, a significant reduction from what we saw, from what they reported to us, that some students may have left to go to private schools because of the pandemic and the COVID. So in those areas, from a budgetary standpoint, Mr. Stars, there's no recommendation, but he's going to use the best numbers, probably from the previous year for budgeting purposes. It's most likely more accurate. This came from conversations the administration had with different principals and administrators, and said that some of the students, yes, as soon as we're back in, they're going to return to Bridgewater Raritan. So some of the reasons why we're doing it. We had an HVAC assessment and projects proposals discussion. We continue a discussion on the HVAC projects and assessments in the district. Mr. Stars presented to us several different proposals from the architect. In those discussions, we talked about, we had talked the last meeting with the architect about our heating systems and what's best, and the different layouts and options that could be done. Three proposals that came, he brought three proposals forward. One was for the assessment of our HVAC systems, and the other three were for the 200 building, the middle school cafeteria, and the middle school N wing. The committee recommended moving forward with the high school rooftop unit on the 200 building, and that would be changing to rooftop units and making them all getting rid of the unit vents in the 200 building. We're also looking at redoing the rooftop unit in the N wing in the middle school. That unit has had some issues in performance and operation, and it's about 20 years old, Peter. 20 years old. So that,
Yes.
And we also looked at adding air conditioning to the cafeterias at the middle school, which include doing rooftop units there and also changing the windows in the outside. And I had one question on that, Peter. Does that include changing the windows on the inside of the cafeteria?
No, right now it's only for exterior windows.
Is that something we should think about from that standpoint?
That would be a significant additional cost because of the number of windows that cafeteria does have.
Okay. All right, just checking. I just something I was thinking about, and if it's needed, you might want to ask the architect for the efficiency of the system if those might be needed in the future. So something else to think about. So we recommend those on the agenda. We did not put forth the also architect gave us a proposal for assessing all of our heating and ventilation systems. We did not put that forward because we had a larger discussion about the architect, which we want to bring to the full board. So I'd like to talk that when I get done here. Some other matters we discussed. We briefly discussed proposals of the architect services and other professional services, which we like to talk to the full board about. An update was given about concerning the camera, the wiring projects, and what's being done. Access control kickoff meeting recently held, and the generator project for the high school permits being submitted to the appropriate agencies. The committee recommended, determined the conversation regarding the RFP should be for the full board, and we adjourned at 7:44 p.m. Questions? Thoughts?
What do you want to say about the architect?
Well, we had the conversation about the architect. I brought it up at the last board meeting that we should look at our vendors every 3 years. We have, I've been trying to do that with both. We do that with the auditor and other vendors. We looked at the lawyer, and I mean, in this point, sometimes it's good to see if that vendor is the appropriate match for what the board needs. And I had not, my personal opinion, from seeing the proposal from the security plan, was not overwhelmed with what they had done, and felt that there could have been better. And is it an option we should talk about and look to maybe have a change? I mean, they've been with this since 2007. Peter felt happy with them, but sometimes it's good to see what else the options are, and if there are better solutions out there that serve our needs.
And that was a committee-wide feeling?
That's my opinion. The committee-wide had their own opinion. We wanted to have a full board discussion on this. So we can do it now, new business, however we like to do it.
Jill?
I thought the full board discussion the committee wanted to have was on that ventilation assessment only for right now. I was more a broader thing, because I had some comments about that. I don't know if we're getting into it, but before that, I have a question on the middle school, the N wing. Is that including office and library, Mr. Stars? Because I already saw that from the long range facility plan.
No, the N wing is the furthest wing from the main office.
But I remember on the long range facility plan it was listed together with library and office. So it's decided not to do that at this time, or is it's
correct? We were experiencing more issues with the N wing than those areas.
Okay. And again, Barry, are we talking about?
I think we were talking about with the architect a full assessment of all facilities so that we had a comprehensive view and would be able to target our capital reserve monies or any other monies that we decided to pursue in the future, that we would be able to have an updated prioritization of each building, of each of the capital areas and that qualified for capital improvements in each building, and have it prioritized before we proceeded down the path of spending or requesting additional funds.
I'm in favor of that, but I'm in favor of not just using that quote that we got, because there's some things in there that I thought it was a little too narrow. And some of the wording was, they're gonna tell us how many rooms have ventilation or mechanical ventilation. Well, we know we could count that, and it's only going to be subjective, not objective, nothing objective, but just subjective. But maybe we need more of an engineer, an HVAC engineer, who could maybe measure airflow and not just say,
So there was going to be a whole, I thought the idea was an RFP for opening up architectural firms to see what kind of assessments they could provide us across the board.
Okay.
Well, that was the broader discussion we were going to have.
So that assessment that was part of the FFT in the drive, which everybody could see, was I thought that was that listed the scope that they're going to. It sounds like they were doing it. They're going to survey, filter size. They're going to survey.
Jill, we didn't recommend that one to come forward.
Right. Oh, so that I thought that was for a full board discussion.
That can be that was the board discussion. Is that we're looking what we're doing moving forward. Peter had prepared an RFP for the architect, and in the conversation we had wanted to have the architect discussion committee based on the last board meeting. So we talked about it. We'd also and then it was brought forward by the members wanting to have a full board discussion on that. And that conversation can include many ways of going out for RFPs, and Peter can expound on that. But one of them is looking for the assessment. You know, who can assess us? Does Arctic need to do it? Is there other firms that do it better than we do assessing our facilities? We want to know more detail about what we need and spending.
Right.
Our recommendations moving forward with the 3 HVAC projects, where you start and moving forward to put the best practices in place for our air conditioning systems, improve areas where we're having issues, and also address other areas and start upgrading, as in adding the air conditioning to the cafeteria in the middle school.
Right. I understand. I'm all for what's on now to approve. But I
Okay.
also want to just throw in my 2 cents that I think we should have a full audit of all the rooms, classrooms, offices, interior spaces to find out, not, like how this was written, not if it exists, but how many rooms don't have any even natural ventilation? How many of these systems have dampers that could fully open to get fresh air intake? How many, like, percentage of fresh air intake that could be for ventilation? And I also think it's worth, if this is tied into some future referendum, it's worth it, not just to get through COVID or some future pandemic, but air quality is really important for, there's a lot of absenteeism from students and asthma. And, I think it's worth doing this. I don't know if this could be, sounds like it could, how can they test the HVAC though in the middle of the winter? Don't they have to test it a little in warmer weather, or they could, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have
That's okay. These are good questions. This is why we're having a full board.
I think I would like to see more research on who is the best out there to do these kind of things, like talk to other districts. Like West Orange there was an article about West Orange. They had somebody called L Associates, I believe. And there's a lot. So I think it's worth doing this, worth spending the money. As far as RFP for everybody else, for all the other architect work, you said since 2007 it's been. So I think it's a good idea.
They did do a proposal RFP back in 2017. I forget what project. Peter, what project was that for?
I'd have to look. I don't recall what that was for. Could have been a roof.
So
is this something we need to discuss further in new business, or how do we move forward right now?
So I thought that the question was, because everything that was said could be included in the same. The idea was that you would get an architectural, look for an RFP for an architectural firm who could supply all of the kinds of things that were talked about in this discussion. And then, of course, they would apply for that. Variety, I'm sure more than one would apply, and then the board would decide that whether it wanted an interview process with the full board or a committee, most likely a committee, and then come out of that with a recommendation, maybe to stay with the same architect if he chose an RFP, but to look around and see what's out there and to see what firms are offering, since I believe it was 2007 was the last time you did that.
So what do we need to do to make that decision? Do we need a board vote on it, or can we just go out for RFP?
Yeah, I thought the committee got to a point where they felt they wanted to move with full board approval to do an RFP if that was going to be the case. Did I get that right, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to have a discussion. We felt that the full assessment was needed to move forward so that we knew where we stood with everything we had, So
do we put that on January's agenda to vote on? I guess I'm looking for logistically.
There doesn't need to be a formal vote in my mind. We just need to have consensus of the board that we're going to go out to RFP and understand that we're going to do this.
So does anyone have an objection to doing that, or do you want me to go around? Do we want to take a formal vote right now?
You just.
Okay. So any objections? Okay, so I think you have what you need, hopefully. Okay, thank you. Were there other questions for Mr. Walker? Okay, next
I,
we're
I
up.
will ask Peter, we got to switch our drives around for our stuff. Per our retreat, we're still in the wrong directory with our stuff, and I want to get yelled at by Jill.
What do you mean?
Okay, next we're up with personnel with Mrs. Gladstone, but before you start, I am going to remind people that we had our retreat with the action plan discussion, and I still need to write up what we talked about. But one of the items was with the committee reports, to stop after each item to see if people had any questions. So hopefully, Mrs. Gladstone, you could lead us off in that effort. You're on mute.
Yep, just 1 second. I had to move locations in my house and I've got to just bring up the minutes. Sorry about that. Just bear with me. Okay. We met on December 7th at 3:30 p.m. In attendance besides myself was Mr. Joshi, Ms. Lee, Dr. Fakara, Dr. Valani, and Dr. Daniel Fonder as a guest, who will be future assistant superintendent personnel. First, we reviewed the personnel addendum that is on for tonight. We reviewed the draft. We discussed Ms. Dr. Valani discussed with the committee the updates from NJSIAA regarding winter sports and the dates that sports are allowed to begin practice and playtime. Since ice hockey practice is permitted to begin with virtual and outdoor dry land practice on December 14th, that is added on the stipends are on personnel addendum, and the other coaches will be approved at a later date. The recommendation was to go ahead with the personnel addendum. Are there any questions on topic number 1? Nope. Okay.
There are other coaches besides ice hockey in the personnel addendum, right?
Was there winter guard?
I think there's basketball.
I think basketball.
So
Cheer.
just following up on that. So there are other ones on there. I'm just asking. So it mentioned that they're moving forward with ice hockey, but I guess they're moving forward with the other ones too.
Let's see about that. I thought maybe, was there a change? I don't know. Maybe. What's that?
Okay.
I can't hear who's talking to me. Dr. Fakar, do you have any idea? I thought it was just going to be hockey and the winter guard.
No, I saw basketball. I saw cheer.
Okay.
Let me see if they were removed or not.
No, we removed all the sports were all moved back until
Yeah, there was an explanation. Hang on.
There's bowling, basketball, cheer, girls basketball, hockey.
Maybe if we prove that, we should
country
double check. I really thought it was supposed to be just with the personnel committee was told it was just going to be what could start in December, nothing in January yet.
Yeah, that was for December only.
So
Yeah.
some groups were, so hockey was, while the hockey was postponed until January, they were allowed to practice outdoors. So there was this qualifier about practices for outdoors without participation in games until some were January, some were February, and some were March.
Okay, so we'll assume that is all.
Those were for practice.
Okay, topic 2 was a confidential staff matter, which can't be discussed here in open session. Then we talked about just an update about the open principal positions. Dr. Fakar explained that he asked central office administrators to review applications for the open Hamilton school principal position. And as we said last time, the middle school and Hillside school positions will be posted after the start of the calendar year. Any questions on that so far? Moving on. We discussed a sidebar, which is on for tonight. It was discussed in closed session earlier. Sidebar for the BREA to adjust substitute pay when substitute teachers cover substitute teacher assistant positions. The committee approved that recommendation. All good. Any questions? Moving forward, next we discussed minimum wage rate change. Dr. Vellani reviewed with the committee that minimum wage is increasing effective January 1st, 2021. This will impact the rate of pay for cafe play assistants. A resolution will appear on tonight's board agenda to increase the pay rate. And Dr. Ficarra is in conversations with board counsel to determine if any other positions need to be updated based on the rate change. Questions, comments? Seeing none, then we had a school safety update. Dr. Vellani reviewed information related to school safety. She discussed the outcome of the recent meeting regarding camera and swipe installations, site assessment training, and Alyssa's Law. Committee members asked how the installation of cameras will impact the MOA in relation to the police department access to live feed. Dr. Vellani discussed options the district should consider when sharing camera feed. And that's future. Once these cameras are installed, conversations will have to happen between the district and the police department about that access. A law went into place a few years ago saying that if schools have video cameras, there have to be some system where police can get in. Any questions? I mean, to view, but there have to be parameters set up.
Yeah, I think the viewing is mainly for emergency purposes.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a one-time. I mean, it's set up in a one. It's not all the time. It's just one.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
It's
and we give permission, so it's not like they can.
No, it's not all the time for spying or checking their kids or anything. It's just for security purposes in a case of emergency, but still they have to have it set up.
Yeah, I mean, that was something it's been, that law has been in place for 3 years, I think now. So I'm glad we're going to be in compliance with that. So
that'll be good. And then lastly, we just talked about I asked about how they review, as Jackie mentioned before, there's so much was done on job description updates. So I just asked for a little update. Most of the certificated positions, job descriptions were updated, as were others. But Dr. Vellani was going to put together a document to show what needs to be done going forward. And as far as the job description updates, no action was needed at that. We adjourned at 4:28, and we just penciled in a meeting for the next committee. We don't know who's going to be on it, but we just put something on the calendar, time to be determined, but on Monday, January 11th, but that could be changed. We just wanted to get something up before the next full board meeting. Any other overall questions? Thank you.
So I saw the write-up on in the brief about the coaches. So the other coaches are working virtually, so that's where we're approving them. So I was just going to follow up. I answered the question for myself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gladstone. And actually, before we move on, since this was one of our action plans to improve the readout of the minutes, did anyone have any feedback or reaction at this point in time? Okay. Next, we're up to the liaison and delegate reports. Does anyone have any?
Dr. Ficarra and I attended the CSA meeting the other day.
Okay.
There's not a lot of activity there, but we had a lot. Dr. Ficarra explained the discussion of what's going on with the pandemic. He had some questions back and forth, how we're handling it in the hybrid classrooms. I kind of gave them an update that we're moving forward with some projects like the swipes and the cameras and other strategic projects we're looking at. And it's always a budget time for the board. I think that's about it. Anything else, Dr. Ficarra?
No, I think you covered it. It was a brief meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else, any? Okay, I am not sure that this really falls here, but I am going to mention it for the Educator of the Year and the Educator Support Professional of the Year. We were invited, a board member was invited to participate in the high school selection committee, and it wound up being me. So I just wanted people to know that I did participate. And it was actually great it was an honor actually to be able to participate and really see how the process is run. And I felt it was a very fair, effective process. So I was just very impressed with it and just really appreciated that opportunity.
Hey, Jackie?
Yes.
You reminded me that although it's not a formal liaison, but I was present and assigned to attend the meetings. There was a DAC committee meeting run by Ms. Jones. That's the district evaluation and
Advisory committee. Yeah.
Advisory committee. That was the membership includes an assortment of administrators and staff members, and I was representing the board to sit and listen in. And the discussion was about how the round one observations have been going for teacher evaluation, and it was really interesting and enlightening and positive. Good discussion back and forth. And it was nice to be part of that. And anything, I don't know if Karen wants to say anything about that, but not.
It's just a committee that we reconvened at the advice of the road back to look at how we do teacher observations when you're in a hybrid virtual model, to make sure that everybody feels that they understand what the parameters are and that they're being supported.
Thanks. And I made a comment that it seemed that both administrators and teachers were showing appreciation towards each group. The groups were showing appreciation for the flexibility in this times of COVID and distant and virtual instruction and the meetings before the observation. It was just very nice feeling overall. And then I attended the CUSAC monitoring meeting, which was yesterday, as the board member. And that was a 2-hour-long meeting, and CUSAC is on for tonight. It was very good to hear how each administrator in charge of different components of CUSAC, how they showed the evidence needed for when the state comes in for the CUSAC evaluation. And it was just a rundown of what they show to prove to the state that we are doing everything in compliance with regulations. So that was yesterday.
Thank you. Anyone else we missed?
Jackie, I'm sorry. Can I just backtrack 1 second?
Yes.
Where is the resolution about the change in minimum wage? Because I don't remember reading it when I went over the agenda, and now I just can't find it. I hate the thought of missing something.
It's not there. We'll have to have that on the January one.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could just piggyback on Jill's comments about the CUSAC. When you get to the resolution, it's a little bit misleading because the name of the instrument that the state requires us to use, the title of that instrument is the 2018-19 New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum District Performance Review. That's the official title of what we have to use. And it's misleading in the fact that it leads with 2018-19, leading people to wonder if we're not talking about the wrong year. But that's the title of it, and that's the one that we use for now. The majority of the information that they review, they'll be reviewing as of January. But there are certain reports that go back, in some cases, 2 years. For example, standardized testing that is a part of that report did not come from last year. It came from the year before, and that was because we didn't have standardized testing last year. So that was the year the manual was revisited and revised, and that's the name of the manual, and they'll keep that until they have some more major revisions, but do not confuse that with the actual year that we're talking about.
Anything else? Yes, Steve.
Jackie, I just wanted to note that at the last Somerset County Board Association meeting, I attended along with Jean, Jessica Levitt, and Lucy Sandler, the Governance 2 module that was offered in conjunction with that meeting. So on fundamentals of school finance, and it was very interesting, and we appreciate the fact that they put that on as a webinar for us.
That's great to hear. Anything else? Okay, I think we are now up to the first opportunity for public comment. Individual and/or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for only matters being acted upon. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted this opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. As this meeting is being conducted remotely as a virtual meeting, public comments can be made via the following options. 1, completing the form online, which will be read at the appropriate point in the meeting. 2, leave a voicemail at 908-725-3976. Or 3, email or letter received by the board secretary prior to 6 p.m. indicating the person's desire for the email to be read as public comment. And do we have anything at this time?
So there are no emails, there is no voicemail, and the comment that is listed on the Google Sheet is more appropriate for the second public session, so we could read it there.
Okay, thank you. So we will close that section at this time, and we are now up to approval of minutes for November 17th and regular and closed session, and December 9th for the retreat.
So moved.
Is there and a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Malik.
Yeah. Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to personnel 21-18 through 21-20. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a
Second.
second? Okay, any discussion?
Are we not voting on the grievance tonight? Or do we not have to vote on it at all? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I didn't hear the response.
No, Barry shook his head no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Malik,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to curriculum 21-12. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Hold on a second. Sorry, I lost my screen.
That's okay.
Oh no, I'm good. Thank you.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Malik,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to business 21-64 through 21-73. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Malik,
Yes.
Miss Joshi, Mr.
Yes.
Joshi,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. And I just wanted to call out to say thank you for the gifts of the 12 umbrellas from the Crim School PTO and the 80 welcome bags from the Crim School PTO, as well as the Apple gift card from Joyce Frazier and Catherine Boyle. Thank you very much. And next we have got, give me 1 second here. Next, we're up to special services, SS 21-22 and SS 21-23. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Malik,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to other 21-26 through 21-28. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? And this would probably, if it's HIB related, it would need to be enclosed, but the QSAC can be here. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Malik,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes on 21, 26, and 28. No on 21, 27.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to policy 21-23 and 21-24. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a
Second.
second? Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Malik,
Yeah.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. We're now up to the second opportunity for public comment. Individuals and or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for any matters. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted this opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. As this meeting is being conducted remotely as a virtual meeting, public comments can be made via the following options. 1, completing the form online, which will be read at the appropriate point in the meeting. 2, leaving a voicemail at 908-725-3976. Or 3, email or letter received by the board secretary prior to 6 p.m. indicating the person's desire for email to be read as public comment. Mr. S'mores, or
Yes, so we do have a actual audio that I'll need to play here, so let me do that.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'd like to comment on the idea of resurrecting the study to change school start times in Bridgewater, Raritan. In February 2020, we were able to put the lack of transparency behind us, and a committee of all stakeholders was formed. Then COVID hit. At that time, we learned a lesson from what happened in the past. We learned that all stakeholders must be involved in all aspects of this issue. We know we need to resurrect the stakeholder committee formed prior to the pandemic. We know this committee must be involved in the creation of all surveys. We know that this committee must see all data from these surveys. Since the original committee never had the opportunity to meet, I believe we are starting with a clean slate. That being said, I'm struggling to understand why the board views this as a priority at this time. So many of our families, students, and staff are struggling emotionally, financially, facing childcare issues, not to mention physical health concerns from COVID. Some families and faculty are facing all of these issues. I believe we need to examine what the priorities for the Bridgewater-Raritan Regional School District are at this time. As I see it, our biggest priority is the health, emotional and otherwise, and safety of our students and staff members as related to the pandemic. Certainly, the mental, emotional health of our students should be the priority right now. We are in the throes of a serious pandemic. Does the district believe that the families of the Bridgewater-Raritan School District view school start times as a priority? Some days we barely have enough staff to open schools due to quarantining, illness, and leaves. As people, students, staff members, and family members get sick and are their jobs, is this the priority for us right now? Again, I believe our main priority in the Bridgewater-Raritan School District during this pandemic is to maintain the health and safety of our schools, our students, our staff members, and all of the Bridgewater-Raritan School District families. I believe a school start time discussion should wait until we are on the other side of this pandemic, physically, emotionally, and financially. We have no idea whether the district will be able to afford a start time change based on the economic condition of our state and the looming school funding cuts. This district immediate concerns of our students, our staff members, and the BRRSD families ahead of any major changes. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your time and consideration. Laura Kress.
Okay, so next we have comment that was in the public session, first public session, but is more appropriate for this section. It's by Mr. Zachary Bray from Raritan. My name is Zachary Bray, and I am a Raritan resident as well as a teacher in the high school. I would like to take a moment to thank Anne-Marie Mead for her 9 years of service on the Board of Education. She has done an admirable job and as the lone representative for Raritan Borough, and an admirable job representing the voices of all families and children in our district. Anne-Marie, thank you for always staying true to your word and consistently being prepared and well-reasoned during your tenure on the board. Your convictions were strong, your opinions were educated, and your work is a mark others should look to as a prime example of what it means to be a public servant. On behalf of Raritan Borough, I sincerely thank you for representing our town so fiercely these last 9 years. I have enjoyed working with you on the Raritan Library Board of Trustees and look forward to continuing that work as well as work in any other capacity. You are a true asset to our community and will be missed on the Board of Education. I wish you nothing but the best for your future endeavors. Sincerely, Zachary R. Bray.
Very well said.
Bear with me. Next, we have 4 comments. First being from Lisa DeCencio from Branchburg. I'm begging you as a second grade teacher in the district for over 20 years, please do not take away a possible snow day for our students. If we truly want to follow what is in the best interest of our children, give them this day to be kids and maybe get a little bit of normalcy back. Forcing them to sit behind a device on a day meant for them is not okay. If you choose to not close school, you are welcome to join my class during this winter storm to see how well these children are doing when all they want is to play outside. Next is from Laura Kress, president of the BREA. I want to wish Anne-Marie and Zach for their time serving on the board. I wish you both all the best. The staff will miss the both of you. Next is from Laura Scolaris. I just wanted to say good luck to Anne-Marie, and it was great to have her on the Board of Ed. She did a lot for this district. She will be missed. Also, good luck to Zach. Next is from Kelly Ryan. Go Guardian would be helpful at the primary level as well, not just 5 through 8. And those are our public comments for this evening.
Okay, thank you. And we'll close that section of the meeting. Next, we're up to old business. Does anyone have any old business?
I guess I do.
Yes.
I just want to say that I echo the comments from Ms. Kress regarding looking at school start times in the middle of this crazy time we're in. I don't think it's appropriate. I think there's, for all the reasons she said, as well as I have concerns about learning loss, regression, real educational factors that I don't know. I have no idea. I know I couldn't learn under these circumstances, under some sort of hybrid circumstance, the way I would going to school every day. I think that's our primary focus right now. And again, if we want to change school start times down the road, that's fine. I had a million plans that I had to change or cancel prior to the pandemic. My life changed. Everybody's life changed. The whole world is affected by this. And to push this through right now, when everything is upside down and topsy-turvy and our administration has huge fish to fry, I think is foolish. That's it.
Anyone else? Mr. Joshi?
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Lynn, but aren't we doing that right now? As part of the curriculum committee, are we not discussing things that we can do to improve this virtual learning? We're doing it right now. So it's not like we're ignoring.
I never said we were ignoring it. I'm saying I don't know that
That's
it's
what you're
working
insinuating.
and that we may have to do a lot of recovery.
But we are,
That's what
though.
I'm saying.
But we are, aren't we? Aren't we not doing that?
We're looking
not?
at it. That doesn't mean we're doing it. That doesn't mean we waved a magic wand and fixed things.
But we're doing it, right? And
no
one
don't
is
think so.
pushing through the school start times. There is no, how can you say we're pushing it through? How? Please give me some proof. How are we pushing it through? The committee hasn't met.
Something
The committee
that
has to meet.
our
Hold on, let me finish. Hold on, let me
administration should
finish.
be working
Let me
on
finish.
right now. You asked me a question, I answered it.
No, but I haven't finished it yet. Hold on. Hold on. The committee hasn't met once, okay? There has been no robust discussions that has occurred with the community and amongst ourselves. So how can you say that we're pushing it through?
What I
How do you answer?
remember at the last meeting, there were 2 board members that went without the rest of the board and spoke to the superintendent and said we needed to get this started.
No,
And
that's
that was
wrong.
reported out to us that it was going to get going.
That's wrong.
Okay,
Can we
I
have that
accept it.
discussion again? What happened? Can we have that discussion? And Dr. Ficarra said that he forgot to add that into his report. That was not a covert operation as he explained. Okay, so there was nothing that
I'm
happened.
not saying it's a covert operation. I'm saying it happened. That's why Laura mentioned it in her comments.
But
Because
how are we
we
pushing it through?
discussed that this is something that we should start looking at again now. And I'm saying I agree with Ms. Kress that I don't think it's the right time to look at this huge school start time initiative for financial reasons, for logistic reasons, for many, many reasons. That's my opinion. I don't need to argue. I'm
But
telling
how
you,
are we pushing it
I'm
through?
supporting what she said.
But how are we pushing it through? You said we're pushing it through. How are we pushing it through?
I think that some of the board members are trying to get the administration to start the initiative now. That's what I heard last meeting.
Why
That's
can't
what
we
I'm
start
saying.
the initiative?
And you heard
Why
the
can't we
same thing
start?
I said, because you said something about walking and chewing gum.
And and I said that last time, we can do multiple things. This is our job. We can't put things on hold. Okay, we can continue the discussions. And by the way, the discussion hasn't even occurred yet.
There's a pandemic,
The discussion hasn't even occurred yet.
but it shouldn't occur. That's my point. I'm agreeing with Laura.
Mrs. Mead, it looked like you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure what occurred, what started, what didn't. But the point that I'm taking from Laura Kress and Lynn, and it certainly is my point, is there is an awful lot that's going on in this school district right now, an awful lot. And there was a comment made, walking and chewing gum at the same time. And I'm not quite sure that getting a bunch of people from the community together and the time and effort on the administrative side of this is as easy as walking and chewing gum. I would pretty much bet that it's completely different. It is a lot of thought. It is a lot of time. It is a lot of effort. It's a lot of communication. And I thought what I'm hearing is, and what I read in the comment and listened from Laura Kress is simply, now's not the time to start those conversations because there's so much else going on with the students, with the staff, with their families, financially, whatever it happens to be, that let's get through this and then start the conversation. Pick up that conversation. That's what I think it is. That's what I had heard, and I support that. And I think, you don't have to decide now. You don't have to put a resolution through, but just can think about it as you go through the next couple of months. What's happening in this district with the administration, with the teachers, with the faculty staff has never happened before. Let them get it right. We had a great conversation at the beginning of this board meeting where we talked about students, we talked about education, we talked about assessment. That's what we need to be focusing on now and in the near future. That's what I heard.
And we are focusing on that right now. We are doing it. So on this agenda, we just approved air conditioning. That's a financial hit we're taking, aren't we? We're moving forward with it. When I said chewing and walking at the same time, that's precisely what I mean. Business happens. Life moves along. We can't stop it. Things have to continue. That was my meaning behind that phrase. And we can do this. And no one is pushing it through. And as we've said, more than likely, this may not happen in 2021. But the discussion has to continue. That's all I was saying.
Any other discussion at this time? Any other old business? Zach, did I see you raise your hand or no?
Yeah, so I just want to echo the same things that Lynn, Anne Marie, and Laura Kress have all been saying. Like, I understand where AJ's coming from with the idea of we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but there's so many other pressing issues that I think the administration should be focusing their attention on. I think as a student, or as a college student, the education that I've received now is vastly different. And in my opinion, I've struggled significantly. I think I've learned less this semester than I ever have. And I think for students in K through 12, this is even bigger because for me, this is more of I guess you can view it as the icing on the top. But for these students, this is the fundamental building blocks of the rest of their educational lives. And I would rather the administration is focusing more on making sure that students aren't regressing and they're actually able to learn. I struggle so much with online schooling. I feel I am unmotivated. I am just completely not engaged. And this is coming from a student who has an extremely well GPA at Rutgers. And earlier this semester, I was struggling to complete even the most basic of assignments. If students like me are, and this is not a unique thing to me, almost every single person I know who goes to Rutgers or even other colleges is struggling with this immensely. If the high school student reps would like to speak up, I would love to hear what they have to say about how online education, how the switch to virtual has impacted them in their academic careers. And I think the problem is, yes, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but I think comparing the HVAC renovations to completely changing the way the district operates in terms of our schedules is not even the same. It is nowhere close. And even if it is something that is going to happen later down the line, and it is just these committee meetings, like, first of all, I would want everyone involved to be as engaged as they possibly can. But I think every single person in both Bridgewater and Raritan is struggling with their own unique problems, and people are not going to be as engaged with the school start time committee as they normally would in a regular time. And I think we want to ensure that the community is as engaged as possible, because we saw what happened last year when we tried to enact later start times. The community felt that we violated their trust. And we have to be even more cautious now than we were last year to ensure that we A, can build back their trust, and B, maintain their trust. And I think pushing through this right now is not the right decision.
Steve?
So, first of all, I'm going to agree with what some of the others have said. I don't know that right now is the time to be dealing with this. However, I disagree with the idea or the story or narrative or whatever you want to call it, that the board is pushing anything through. At no point has this board over the past 6 months discussed school start times as in any way. The only mention of it has been that the committee hasn't actually met. And I don't think it's time for the committee to meet, because I don't think it's something that a committee can do in virtual format. I think it's something that you have to have in person, which is why I don't know that we're ready to talk about this yet. However, the story that the board is pushing something through is false. We talked about last week our role as board members. Our role as board members is that we can't act individually. We can't act as couples or whatever have you. We can only act as a board. So to suggest that the board is pushing anything through, I think is a falsity. And I think that we've never tried to enact school start time. We tried to start having a conversation about it. And I think the conversation is something that I'm looking forward to. I just don't like the rhetoric of pushing things through.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to make one comment, and it's not me supporting or denying like the argument that like the board is trying to push it through, but I think it's important to remember what was also said in the board retreat and the self-evaluation was board members meeting with administrators during the day. There are very clear examples written in the comments that not every board member is following this following the duties and responsibilities of what it is to be a board member. So I think like I understand why other board members are a lot more cautious and skeptical, because we've seen this type of behavior in the past. So why, like, what has changed to think that this behavior has like actually isn't happening anymore? That's it.
I don't think there's an issue with the board president and board vice president meeting with the superintendent. As far as I know, there is nothing wrong with us bringing up a new member of the administration up to speed on some of the background that's taken place. There was no decision making. There was nothing like that. So I don't think that there's any issue with us doing that. And if I'm wrong, I will stand corrected and I will not do it again. But as far as I know, there is nothing wrong with what we did. And we were not trying to, we act as a full board. No decisions were made. And as Steve said, that can only happen with the full board's approval. The second thing I'd like to mention is the pandemic has already impacted this. And we did have a board majority vote and agree with the majority that we should put a plan together. And we have lost a year and absolutely understand why that had to happen. It was the right decision not to meet. But that doesn't mean we're not ready to meet now a year later to discuss, and I'm not talking about implement for next year, but to start the discussions. Otherwise, we will lose another year. And if Dr. Ficarra in his many, many years of experience as superintendent, comes to the board and he says, you know what? We cannot support discussions even at this point in time to talk about planning, I will respect that decision. But I would look for him to say that he cannot handle that workload or his administration cannot handle it right now. And I greatly respect his opinion. Did anyone else want to say anything? Okay. Any other old business?
Well, I didn't get a chance to say thank you and good luck to both Zach and Anne Marie. You've done a wonderful job on the board. You've represented your communities and put what's best for students first. So I want to thank you. You will be missed. You're going to do great things, Zach. I'm looking forward to what you're going to do next. Anne Marie, you're an amazing individual. You're always so honest and sincere what you're doing. Thank you so much for that. So I wish you two the best. Have a wonderful holiday and enjoy your freedom next year, okay? And the extra time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we're now up to new business. We've got the 2021 board calendar. So I'm assuming we're not approving this tonight, but are there any comments regarding it?
Yeah, this is just to see if there's any issues before the board votes on it at the reorg. So to make sure we're set for the reorg.
And I don't recall off the top of my head, Peter, but do we have, I think it would be good if we set aside a few extra meeting times to do the equity discussions we talked about for goals and also for the roles and responsibilities of the board. So maybe early on, particularly for the roles and responsibilities, to maybe put an extra, maybe 2 meetings on the agenda, on the calendar. And again, I don't recall, maybe you even already have that on there. And also Jill's point about let's set up specific dates that we do goal updates, both for the district goals and for the board goals.
So you want specific special meetings for those two, equity and roles and responsibilities?
Yes, unless anyone, the other option is to tack it on to a meeting, but I'm afraid then the meeting gets very long. So any feelings about whether we have separate meetings or whether we just have a couple of longer meetings?
I'd rather have separate meetings.
Okay. And since I'm not hearing anything from anyone else, I'm going to assume separate meetings is good.
I only had one question on the calendar.
Sure.
Or so far as I have seen it. The middle school graduation is set for the same day as a Board of Ed meeting. Is that going to be an issue in terms of timing, or does that not happen?
I would think that would be a problem.
The meeting on June 22nd.
We usually move it. It's never on there's not graduation and meeting. We usually have the Thursday after graduation.
Could be either the Thursday or Monday.
If we're voting, I vote Thursday.
I'm just taking a look here. I see one retreat listed here. We probably need a second retreat for the board self-eval in December.
The 7th of December, maybe?
Sounds okay to me. If people, that sounds fine. Any other comments on the calendar?
The November date, Peter, the 16th versus the 9th. I was just wondering. Because we can have committee meetings on the 8th. Yeah. All right. I get it. Answer my own question.
Okay. Anything else? Any other new business? Okay, so our next meeting is not until the new year on January 5th, and that'll be the reorganization meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I think Anne Marie should have that motion.
Okay, Anne Marie
Motion to adjourn.
and Zach,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, happy holidays, happy new year, and thanks again, Anne Marie and Zach, for everything that you've contributed. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Good luck.
Happy holidays.